Well, it's not true that Jesus borrowed the donkeys in our lesson today because he thought his followers would get a kick out of them. Nor is it true that they threw down tree limbs so his following could branch out, or facepalm at puns like these. And before anyone shakes their head too long at me for having odd humor at the start of a Palm Sunday sermon, I want to point out that the humor begins in the text with Matthew's very strange assertion that there was a prophecy in Ezekiel that a king, the Messiah, would arrive riding 2 donkeys at once, and not even the same size as that, one mother and the other her colt. And that's a funny image, and it's made odder still because there's no such prophecy in Ezekiel of 2 donkeys, just one. But Matthew tells us that Jesus actually rode into Jerusalem like that, sitting on both a donkey and her colt, a male foal. Donkeys in Matthew's day were symbols of peace and humility. Kings who came to do violence entered on a war horse. Kings who came to bring peace entered humbly and on a donkey. So I usually point out that on that first Palm Sunday, when a huge Passover festival with large crowds began, Pilate would have entered town on one end, astride a war horse, representing earthly power's way of doing things through humans, showing might and power. Jesus came in not only from the opposite direction, but intention, with a very opposite meaning on a symbol of peace and humility. Donkeys, representing heavenly power's way of doing things through bearing peace and humbleness. It's an earthly power and heavenly power face-off. And to understand Holy Week, it's essential to understand that these 2 powers are on that collision course. Holy Week is about that struggle, and it begins and it ends with these 2 very different approaches. And if we're asked to think about both perspectives all Holy Week long, we are swung between the reality of the awful terror of Rome's brutal, unforgiving, violent way and the awe-filled love of God's forgiving, non-violent way. And back and forth we go in the story. And from our ordinary human perspective, there's no doubt Rome is going to hands down win the epic struggle, because brutal might beats everything all the time in ordinary reality. And what makes the story so compelling is that we are given a perspective that brutal might doesn't win. It doesn't beat peace and non-violence. There's discordance in that, though. Non-ordinary happens. The extraordinary reality of the gospel story is that love actually wins, and it wins all the time. No matter what Rome does, it is no match for love. God wins, and not with brutal might, but with peaceful love. And there is all the hope in the world in that. And the crowds embraced that hope on that first Palm Sunday, cheering Jesus on in his humble, peaceful parade into town. They embrace him and they cheer when it's easy to do so, but they lose their mettle when Rome slams its crushing iron fist to palm and arrests Jesus. His followers deny him then, and when Jesus is tried and tortured, they hide, and then at best they watch as he was crucified and died. It's all expected to be over from the ordinary view when the legions step in, arrest, try, torture, and kill Jesus. But it's not over in the least from the vantage of the non-ordinary view. In the extraordinary reality of the Gospels, somehow God gets more and more traction with each evil Roman action. And the traction really starts taking hold at that Palm Parade, that first Palm Sunday. very curious Matthean version of the story comes up in the lectionary every 3 years, and it adds that one really odd twist to the Palm Sunday story. In all the other Gospels, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus rides in on one animal, a colt. And Matthew tells us there's an extra donkey in the picture. Matthew has the colt, but adds the Jenny, the mother, the older she-donkey, and has Jesus ride them both into town simultaneously. And I suggested in my first Palm Sunday sermon here on this text that Matthew did this add to the street drama that Jesus is acting out in first century theater of the absurd, if you will. Jesus and his followers are satirically mocking Pilate's war horses and armed legions parade with a donkey, and Palm leaves humble people's parade. A relatively New Testament commentary sums it up like this: the entry scene is full of irony, imitating celebratory imperial entry processions, yet with an anti-triumphal parody. It creates street theater to critique imperial practice and mindset. Entry processions define greatness in the terms of military violence, defeat of enemies, power, plunder, and public gratitude. Jesus, though, rides not on a war horse, but a donkey, a poor person's working animal, yet also one that evokes the scene of Zechariah 9:9 of God's eschatological king, establishing God's reign triumphantly over all enemies in Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives, continuing ironically to mimic imperial ways even while reinscribing them. And I think that's right with respect to all the Palm Sunday Gospel narratives. But when I started meditating on the story a number of weeks ago, the two-donkey part kept coming to mind, speaking metaphorically like Balaam's donkey to me in prayer. And I spent some time researching its meaning, and basically what I found were claims Matthew misinterpreted Zechariah, or that Jesus rode side saddle and just supported his legs on the colt as he rode the adult donkey. Nothing too profound. Probably the most logical, albeit dry, academic answer I found was that the original poetic style in Zechariah included a custom of stating and then restating the same thought in two different ways. The New American Standard Bible probably teaches best the gist of that with this translation of the text that Matthew misquotes. It reads, "He's just and endowed with salvation, humble and mounted on a donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a donkey." But what we don't hear in English is that the Hebrew references the mount as a young male donkey, and the obvious, the mom of the colt, is a female. And while that seems obvious, the academic argument is that Matthew wanted to make sure that Jesus he portrayed crossed every T and dotted every I of the prophecy. And so he had Jesus ride on both a male and female donkey at the same time, tossing aside, logic. The logic of the difficulty and strange absurdity of solemnly riding two donkeys. Since Matthew seems so bright and educated, especially for his day, I'm skeptical about that explanation. I can see an argument for Matthew adding an extra donkey for an absurd comic image in the street theater sense, but it makes no sense to me that Matthew would add an extra donkey just to fit a poem he read, which like all the explanations on this are necessarily at the end of the day speculative. It's not speculative, however, to conclude that Jesus taught in parables, nor to conclude that his followers also taught in parables. Marcus Borg and John Dominic Crossan point out that Jesus told parables about God and the advent of God, the coming of God's kingdom. His followers told parables about Jesus and his advent and the coming of the bearer of God's kingdom. And it's not a stretch to conclude Jesus' followers told parabolic stories about Jesus' death and resurrection narratives as well. The Gospels can be heard as parables, that is, narratives about the meaning, the truth, with a capital T about Jesus. As Borg and Crossan put it, the meaning of parable, its parabolic truth, does not depend on factuality. And all Christians agree the Gospels are about meaning. And to see these stories as parabolic or metaphoric narratives does not require denying their factuality. It just sets that question aside. A parabolic approach means believe whatever you want about whether the stories are factual. Now let's talk about what these stories mean. Meaning, not factuality, is emphasized. Bible scholars think it's likely that Jesus may have led a theatrical form of arrival in Jerusalem, with some of the gathering Passover crowds welcoming him in protest of Rome and in support of God on that first Palm Sunday. And that alone has meaning. Historically, such a protest would have put the authorities on notice that Jesus was a rebel leader and that some of the Passover crowds were roused to rejoice at that rebellion, maybe even back it. That appears to likely be factual stuff. But what about the little details, particularly the two donkeys in Matthew? Donkeys, I mentioned, meant peace and humbleness. But what about two donkeys? What metaphoric meaning could there be in Matthew's two donkeys? That's what kept coming to me in prayer. We heard one academic notion that Matthew just wanted to make sure a messianic prophecy, as he understood it, was depicted as 100% fulfilled. It's all right, I guess that's one possible meaning. The beauty of metaphor and parable is that we're allowed to contemplate possible meanings beyond what scholars or even an author like Matthew might have intended. And this seems especially true if Jesus really did ride in on two donkeys at once. With all the prayer and thought and research I put into this two-donkey conundrum, symbolic meaning, a metaphoric lesson, appeared to me simple and apt for Palm Sunday. There are two donkeys in our lesson. One old, one young, one male, one female. And the donkeys in our lesson are symbols of peace. The donkeys in our lesson are symbols of humility. The donkeys in our lesson carry Jesus, the Prince of Peace, into the crowd. And we can see and hear all of this as representing Jesus' followers every possible time. Old, young, male, and female. Jesus doesn't own them. But they do serve him, carry him into the waiting crowd. It can be understood as representing Jesus' followers doing what needs to be done to carry Christ into the world, as it were, into Holy Week. Jesus' followers are to be humble peace bearers of Christ. And that's what we're doing today. We do every Palm Sunday, and actually ought to try and do every day. God and Jesus need us to be humble peace bearers of Christ. And I get that the "we are donkeys" thing may not sound dignified to the modern ear, but I'll take being a hard-working, humble symbol of peace, carrying Christ any day of the week, every day of the week, even if it means some might consider me a donkey in a more modern sense. Whatever it takes to start the parade for Christ to march in representing the empire of God, which always wins in the extraordinary reality of the Gospels. And may we all find our way to live and to love in that reality, which is the point of Jesus' way and of Holy Week and Easter. We strive to be ready and waiting, humble peace bearers of Christ.